Good morning. We're going to get started with our invocation, and that will be delivered by a very friendly face, the Honorable Pastor Lee Cooper.
May we stand, let us pray. Dear Lord, again we come once again asking for your guidance, your wisdom. Father, we come today, Father, as we pray for wisdom and guidance. We pray for our mayor, our city manager. We pray, God, for this council. As they seek to do your bidding for your people, God, we ask that you would give to them clarity of mind and thought. During this Advent season, God, we pray that we might be ever mindful of the fact that you've given to us the gift. And we ask even now, Father, that you would bless, Father, these who have chosen to serve, God. May they ever be mindful of those who are less fortunate. Please, Father, we ask that you would give us comfort through your Son, Emmanuel, who has come. God, we pray today that you would bless our city, bless our state, bless our nation. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Councilwoman Salyer, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order, and we do have one item under Office of the Mayor. That is item 3A, a resolution commending city employees, department coordinators, and the Heart of the City Federations for their generosity, and I will move down to the front to handle that resolution. And Beth, you want to come forward? I don't know if everybody else, I'm open to everybody else coming forward.
Love that.
All right, why doesn't everybody who's here for Heart of the City come forward here to the front?
That is
You heard the lady. Get up here. They're not going to come. All right. Well, I think that our city employees give every single day. That's what they do. They're the most generous and best public servants in the nation. But apparently that wasn't enough. So you wanted to give a little bit more, and in fact a lot more. And so once again, our city employees led a tremendous Heart of the City campaign. And let's hear a little bit more about it. If the clerk would please read this resolution.
Whereas Heart of the City is an annual fundraising campaign during which department coordinators rally city employees to raise money for local charities under 4 partner federations: the United Way of Central Oklahoma, Allied Arts, the Regional Food Bank of Oklahoma, and Community Health Charities. Whereas Heart of the City department coordinators dedicate themselves to the campaign from August to November, organizing fundraisers and rallies to raise awareness and encourage their coworkers to give back to their community. Whereas during this year's Heart of the City campaign, city employees raised a record total of $610,000, $30,000 above their goal of $580,000. Whereas Heart of the City coordinators raised $33,000 more this year than they did last year, also increasing their department's fundraisers by $10,000. The Heart of the City campaign has raised more than $5.5 million for local charities since 2007, helping fulfill the unmet needs in Oklahoma City and topping the $500,000 mark for 8 years in a row. Whereas the Heart of the City's 4 partner federations are an essential part of the campaign's success, working with the city and more than 100 local charities serving people in need. Whereas by giving to the Heart of the City campaign, employees are helping the less fortunate, feeding the hungry, supporting a vibrant arts community, and funding medical research. Whereas this council desires to recognize the Heart of the City coordinators and city employees for their dedication to the residents of the city of Oklahoma City. So now, therefore, be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend city employees, department coordinators, and the federations for their generosity and hard work in making Oklahoma City a better place to live.
Well, that is an amazing number, and in fact, it's even a little short. I saw this check. This giant check is actually $612,000 is the real number, and it's a tremendous accomplishment. And Beth, before we vote on the resolution, I suspect you may have a few words. And of course, Beth Crounce, who rallied this army of generous people to get this done.
Thank you, Mayor. I am so proud to be a member of the city family. I am blown away by the people that I get to work with every single day. As the loan exec this year, I did it last year as well, and we hoped to meet goals last year, and we didn't. And so this year, I always had my eye on the $600,000 mark, because I remember when we crossed the $500,000 mark. And I thought, man, if we could ever get there. And lo and behold, did we not only get there, we blew by that number in an amazing amount. We actually raised over $40,000 more than we did last year. So as a city family, we see the needs in our community. We see it every day. And so this is our way, monetarily, of being able to give back to all the wonderful agencies, the federations that this money goes to, the Regional Food Bank, Community Health Charities, Allied Arts, and the United Way of Central Oklahoma. And I can tell you this is a team effort, because every one of those agencies under those federations, they take their time to come out. We had over 200 rallies within the city, and they sent employees to come and tell our employees the stories, where their money goes to, and so we could learn about the agencies that we're giving to. These coordinators before you today did an amazing job, and they all have a team that they work with back in their departments and divisions as well. So this is definitely a team effort. I would be remiss if I didn't personally thank Cleo Rajan. She could not be here with us today. She was in charge of the 400-plus volunteers for the kickoff of the streetcar this weekend, and she's only a part-time employee. So she ran through her hours pretty quick this weekend, doing an amazing job as always. But Cleo, if you're listening online, we couldn't have done this without you and your support, and every one of these coordinators would say the same thing. We had a great leader. These things start at the top, and Mr. Couch has always been a supporter of the Heart of the City campaign. He gave us time. M.T. Berry, we couldn't do it without Assistant City Manager M.T. Berry. He was there every step of the way, no matter what we needed. He was very supportive. The rest of the city managers were too, the assistants, directors. Everybody in the city played a hand in this. So my hat's off to you. I'm very proud of each and every one of you, and I look forward to seeing what we do next year.
Is there anything anybody wants to say?
I do, if I could, David. I have the privilege of serving both on the United Way board and on the Allied Arts board, and it makes me so proud to see the participation of the city, and not just in the dollars that they raise, but as volunteers in these organizations as well. They serve, well, first of all, former City Manager Couch will serve as the board chair, I think, for the United Way starting next year. But we have folks involved in the community impact efforts, doing all of the interviews for the agencies, participating in the arts. It really does speak a lot to the heart of this family of employees that do so much for our community.
Well said. Anybody else? Okay. A motion, perhaps?
I do want to say,
Yeah.
in my opinion, we have the best employees in the United States. We thank them every day for all they do.
Indeed. Well, that was a resolution. Would somebody like to
Make a motion.
make a motion? And a second? All right, let's cast our votes. Francis is gone. We're powerless. we go. Passes unanimously. Well, Beth and your team and everybody, thank you so much. And on behalf of the people of Oklahoma City, this will fill unmet needs, as the resolution said. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is yours to keep. Let's show our appreciation one more time. All right, we are going to, we're done with Office of the Mayor, but I'm going to pull up an agenda item from items from council. This is under 13A. Well, I'm sorry, it's actually under citizens to be heard, but it was an item brought to us from Councilman Mark Stonecipher. And it is a presentation from Chris Hopper, Director of External Affairs, Hearts for Hearing. And I would ask Chris to feel free to come to the podium, and we'll go ahead and get you and your team out of here a little earlier.
We appreciate that. You might as too, after you meet Jackson. Well, good morning, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Chris Hopper, and I work at Hearts for Hearing. And I'm going to give you our location because it means something this morning. We are located on Lake Hefner Parkway between Northwest 122nd and Hefner Road. I'd also like to introduce Darcy Stowe. She is the Director of Listening and Spoken Language at Hearts for Hearing. Together, we are going to introduce to you a very special guest, Jackson Lee, and his mother, Rachel. Jackson was invited by Councilman Mark Stonecipher when he came to our clinic for a tour. He happened to arrive on October 31st. Yes, there were costumes and trick-or-treating happening in the clinic. Jackson immediately gravitated towards Councilman Stonecipher. They held hands and trick-or-treated down the halls. So today, Jackson is here as a guest, and he is going to pass out a small storybook about Hearts for Hearing to each councilman and also councilwoman and say hi. You will see that Jackson is a very chatty and confident 4.5-year-old little boy who happens to be deaf. However, due to the fact that Hearts for Hearing is in existence, along with excellent early intervention of programs and services, miraculous advancements in hearing technology, I can stand before you today with evidence that a deaf baby can learn to listen and talk. That happens every day at Hearts for Hearing.
Thank you very much.
Miss Darcy is Jackson's speech-language pathologist, but she's only somewhat helpful because when Jackson's in the room, he steals the show, and we're simply along for the ride. I love how Mark is already holding hands again. It's so dear. While they're doing this, I'm going to touch on just a couple of key things about Hearts for Hearing. Yes, we are a nonprofit in Oklahoma City, but we represent all 77 counties. We provide the very first set of hearing aids for every single baby born deaf or hard of hearing in the state of Oklahoma at no cost to the family. We also provide speech-language pathology and audiology for a listening and spoken language outcome. So, when a baby is born in a birthing hospital in our state, they're immediately screened for hearing loss, and should they refer, you never say that your newborn baby's failed at something, so we call it refer. If the baby refers on their hearing screening, they're sent to Hearts for Hearing for follow-up diagnostic testing. We provide that at no cost as well, and if hearing loss is indeed the diagnosis, we counsel the families right then about what modes of communication are available for their child. Should they choose listening and spoken language, then we pour ear molds that day. They come back within a couple of days, and we fit them with hearing technology. At that point, the listening journey begins for parents, family members, and caregivers. Typically, we're finished by the age of 3. We have very independent listeners and talkers, which means that these babies that turn into listeners and talkers can stay in their neighborhood schools in all 77 counties, and they do not need to attend a school for the deaf. And that's a lovely statement to tell our families. On another note, we'd like to thank you, Mayor Holt, and Councilman Mark Stonecipher, and council members, for stepping in and taking immediate action on our behalf in regard to the Lamar signage that was going to be located directly on our property line. I'm here representing our board of directors, our staff, and patients to offer our sincerest gratitude to keep this mega billboard away from our property and the detrimental exposure to our children. You guys are faced with astronomical challenges, and yet you picked up the gauntlet on this one, and we are incredibly grateful. Our community is grateful, Hearts for Hearing is grateful, and we couldn't thank you enough for stepping in and providing that guidance and support. In closing, should you need a hearing test or a hearing screening, you know where to go. Hearts for Hearing. We'd love to see you, whether it's a hearing screening or a site visit. You're more than welcome. And thank you again.
Thank you, Chris, very much, and thanks for bringing Jackson this morning. We appreciate it. Any comments or questions?
One of the funnest days of my life. I just happened to walk out there and walked in the front door, and I was talking to a doctor, and Jackson just started yelling at me. And I thought he was talking to the doctor. He's like, hey, come here. And he came over and grabbed my hand, and he took me to where all the candy was. A wonderful day. So thanks for coming, everybody.
Very
So
good.
what is the status of the signage then at this?
The permit was revoked by ODOT, and now there is some litigation between ODOT and Lamar. They've complained about monies that they paid for sign equipment that they are now not going to be able to use at that site.
So it'll be decided in district court?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But they're still trying to get the sign.
They're still trying to get this.
Yeah, we're intervening in the case or attempting to.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, again, I'm also going to pull up one other person from Citizens to be Heard. Bruce Davis, in keeping with a giving theme this morning, president of AFSCME, wanted to brief us on some charitable efforts that they're engaged in. Bruce, welcome.
I say good morning to the council and good morning to my co-workers and friends of the city. I'm just here as I got elected as union president a few years ago. I was trying to find a way that we can merge the city in harmony between employees and management and non-members, that we're all in the same boat. We all work with a great seal of Oklahoma City, and I believe that we are one of the greatest cities in the United States for the things that we're doing, all the growth that we're doing throughout the city and stuff. So I was wanting to give back. I heard about fire and police, the things that they do, but I didn't hear much about what city employees are doing. But the United Way is a great thing. You can't compete with $600,000. No way we can do with that. But I started talking to my members and management, so we all joined ventures together. So throughout the year, we started out by going to the Salvation Army and feeding the needy on weekends up there. We started a community project where we go into the communities as AFSCME and city employees, where we meet the people in the communities. We teamed up with the Capital Chamber of Commerce. They had a yearly block party. We went in and we brought in United Way to do a blood drive, and not United Way, but the Blood Bank Institution to do a blood drive, and also we introduced the city to the citizens of Capitol Hill that this is a great place to work for. You know, we hire people from high school education and non-graduate education, all the way up to doctor's degree. This is a great place to work for. So we're looking for all type of people, all type of citizens to come and work for the city. So we done that when we teamed up with the Martin Luther King Elementary School. We had a big block party with them, took some city trucks out there, introduced the community to what we really do. Most people don't understand what city employees do. They just see fire police, but they don't understand that we're in the business of providing them clean water, sewage out the back of their house, all of the things that goes on in the city. We touch them every day. City employees touch the citizens of Oklahoma City every day. Every day, once a month, we make 3 visits, up to 5 visits to someone's house every month, through trash pickups, through reading meters and all. And so we do a great work. So I'm trying to reintroduce the city employees back to the citizens of Oklahoma City, let them know that we are in a great place of serving the citizens of Oklahoma City. The other things that we've done is on Thanksgiving, we was able to provide 500 meals to 500 citizens in Oklahoma City that needed during Thanksgiving. Now, we're doing this for Christmas. We're having a bike giveaway. We are raising funds through management and non-management employees that we're able to give away some bikes. We're up to about 50 bikes now. Our goal is to do 100 bikes by Saturday. So we're going to do Saturday, we're going to load them on the trailer, have a Santa Claus. We're going to personally deliver bikes to each kid's house who we're going to give a bike to. So that's the things we're trying to do. Like I said, United Way is a great thing, but I still think that we can do more. So I'm teaming up with the members of my union, non-members, and also the management of Oklahoma City on this side of the house, because fire and police has their own thing going on, but I want us to be recognized that we're into the business of giving back. We're being blessed with the good jobs, good benefits. It's time for us to get back to the citizens who's not as fortunate as we are. So I'm just here to tell y'all I'm the union president. We want to change the culture between management and labor, that we can all work together and make this a better place to work for, a better place for our citizens to live in. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. All right, we are now back on the regular agenda, and we are still on page 1 at item 4, Journal of Council Proceedings. We have 2 items there, and we can take them with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 5, request for uncontested continuances on the agenda. 9B is already withdrawn. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, on page 24, we have several. On page 24, item 9I1 is 9I1A, 2400 South Harvey Avenue. We're going to strike this from the agenda. The owner is secured. Item B, 5015 North Military Avenue. We're going to strike this from the agenda. The owner has secured. And then item G, 704 Southeast 29th Street, owner is secured. And also item I, 740 Southwest 44th Street, the owner is secured. And then on page 25, under abandoned buildings, 9J1, item D, 704 Southeast 29th Street, the owner is secured. 740 Southwest 44th Street, the owner has secured. And that's all the items that we have.
All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to 6 revocable permits. 6A, revocable right-of-way use permit with the Professional Basketball Club, LLC, to hold the Thunder Run. And it looks like we have Heather Brown signed up to speak. Heather, if you wouldn't mind coming forward and telling us a little bit about the event.
Hi, I'm Heather Brown. I am the event presentation manager for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I'm in charge of leading the Thunder Run, and it's going to be held December 29th at 9 o'clock a.m. for the Rumble Fun Run, and then at 9:30 we'll have the Thunder 5K.
All right, great. Councilwoman Salyer, Councilwoman Nice.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Looks like, unless he's hiding back there, Councilman Shadid has stepped up. Very good. All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we will recess the council meeting, and we will convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. We have several items here, but the first one requires a presentation that I believe will also cover some items that we'll find later in the agenda as well. So, do you want to introduce?
So Kenton Soodle is our interim finance director. He's the assistant finance director, serving as interim finance director now. I was going to present this, and what we do, we've got several items that are on here under MFA, PPA, and OC. We have all the financials. And then we also, on the consent agenda, have the city's comprehensive annual financial report. So Kenny's going to make a presentation on all of these, and that way we aren't hitting him every time we come up on the agenda. So he'll cover all of those now.
Good morning. So this morning, just a few quick words. You're going to be receiving several financial reports for fiscal year 18. This will include the Municipal Facilities Authority, the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. You also will be receiving the city's comprehensive annual financial report and the single audit, which is the audit related to federal grants. So I would like, before we jump in, just to take a quick moment just to recognize our Accounting Services Division of Finance, our Controller Laura Pappas, Assistant Controller Alex Fedak, Assistant Controller Angela Pierce, who's running the presentation this morning. They are the largest division of finance, and it is an incredible amount of work. And I'd also like to recognize our departments. There's just so much work that goes into putting all of this information together. The city is a very, very large organization. Also, I would like to recognize our external auditors. So, and they are not here today, but as you can see on the presentation, Allen, Gibbs, and Hulick, also known as AGH, they are the ones who did the external audit of our financials. And, you know, the headline today, I'm happy to report on all of these, that they provided an unmodified opinion. So that's, in our world, what that means is this was a clean opinion. There were no findings, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies identified in the audit. So this is a really great thing. One of the other things that they audited, I mentioned, was the single audit, which is an audit that's required if you receive federal grants. And this is 3 years in a row that we've had no findings, and where that really plays to our advantage, not only is it just show good management practices and good financial work, but on that single audit, if you're not a low-risk auditee, in other words, if you don't go a number of years without findings, there's even more audits that you have to perform of your federal grant programs, and that leads to higher costs and more staff time, et cetera. So this was a really good thing. But before we jump into some of the individual financial reports, I just did want to mention we did have one major accounting change this year. So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board issued GASB pronouncement number 75. This was a change in how we have to record the liability related to providing other post-employment benefits, so namely our retiree health insurance. And the reason I want to mention this up front is this is something that's going to affect various financial reports. So our total OPEB liability, so we hire an actuary and they estimate the total OPEB liability, which is an estimate sort of in today's dollars what it would cost to fund over the future years of the cost of providing retiree health insurance. And that liability is, the net liability is $521 million. Now, part of that in the past was on our books. Some of the annual costs, annual required contribution, that's what was booked, and if you didn't fully fund the annual required contribution, that portion is what's been on our books for many, many years. The total liability has been in our notes of the financials for many, many years, but this change just made us recognize that full liability on the balance sheet. So it increased really, while I said the number was 521, the change is really about 347 million is what the new liability that showed up on some of the various reports. And I just wanted to mention that this is not a change in operating costs. It's not a change in the city's financial health. It's just recognizing that full liability to comply with the standards. And as I started to mention, it will hit various financials, so it's not all on just the city. So we're going to kind of refer back to this a couple of times.
Kenny, could I just ask a quick question about AGH? How long have they been doing our external audits?
This is our third year, I believe, with AGH, and it's been a really great process. They've worked well with us, and we have a really good relationship with them.
Great. Do we go out for bid after a certain period of time, or do we switch partners, or how do we?
So I think we have that on 5 years.
Five-year contract.
5-year cycle.
Yeah. And that's kind of been the historical norm is to go out every 5 to 6 years. Okay, so as we jump in, one of the terms I'm going to use a lot today is net position. So net position is kind of one of the most major indicators of financial health when you're looking at it from an accounting perspective. And really, if I can describe net position, that's really just look at all your assets and your financial resources that are available, subtract out all of your liabilities and your obligations, and what's left over, the net, that's net position. So we used to call this net assets a long time ago, but that's what I'm going to kind of use as we talk through this quite a bit. So the first one we'll talk about is on the MFA docket. Item A is the MFA report, and the Municipal Facilities Authority is typically used to provide some various services for city operations, primarily insurance programs. So this is where our health insurance program is, it's where our workers' comp insurance is, it's where our property and liability insurance, those funds are all in the MFA. There's some other things in there, like some of our IT contracts, some nuisance abatement programs, and it's also where we house our funding for where we advance fund some of the A&E costs on GO bond projects to help us get those out quicker. So I'm happy to report there that it has a healthy net position of $34.4 million, and this is relatively flat from the prior year. On the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, so on PPA's docket, that will be item B. The Public Property Authority is where we really house a lot of the financials that are related to some of the different properties the city owns, and mainly this is where we kind of have the financing and the operations of the city's golf courses, the capital improvements that we do at the fairgrounds, the SMG operating contracts at the Cox Convention Center and the Chesapeake Energy Arena, and as of this last year, the Civic Center Music Hall Foundation and those, that operation is in the PPA now as well. It's also where we record our fees and the services that we provide through our business improvement districts as well. So I'm happy to report on the PPA that it still has a healthy net position of $65.4 million. This is a decrease of $8.8 million from the prior year, and this is where we kind of, first place I want to refer back to that OPEB. We do allocate some of that cost out to some of the different trusts where we have employees or where the trust may fund employees, and so $3.8 million of that change was there in the PPA from the OPEB change in the accounting principle. And then also we had the Civic Center Foundation, that whole process moving to the PPA. There was a loan from the MFA for the sound system. That was another one of the big items that decreased the net position, but still overall really healthy. Did want to point out a couple things. So while we look at the overall position of the PPA, if you were to look into the report, we break it out into some of the different business areas, and there were a couple of the business areas that reported a negative net position, and these were the same ones that were reported a negative net position last year, and we kind of gave you some information about that. One of those is our golf system, which, again, primarily it shows a negative net position because of the debt load it has, some of the tight operating position that it has, but there's a large, the majority, I think it's all of the OPEB charge that goes to the PPA hits golf, because that's the employees that we have in the PPA are our golf employees. So if you took out the OPEB change, the golf, while their net position is negative, it actually would have improved this year from the prior year. The fairgrounds also shows a negative net position, but I do want to point out the portion of the fairgrounds that is in the Public Property Authority. That is really just the place that we provide the capital improvements through the hotel tax. So we issue debt, and so that's primarily why it has a negative net position of about $19 million is the debt that's on the books. This is not a concern for me because if you recall, the operating revenues from out there are all handled through Oklahoma State Fair, Inc., the 501c3 that handles the operations there. So it's really just a capital financing vehicle in the PPA. But while those two areas are negative overall in total, it's a positive $65.4 million. Next is the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. So on that docket, it's item B, and this is where we record the resources for the operation related to the collection and disposal of solid waste for the city. Happy to report a very healthy net position of $50.9 million. This is a decrease of $4.3 million from the prior year. Again, this is where the change in accounting principle, OPEB, decreased it by $10 million. So if we would have taken that accounting change out, they would have actually increased their net position as well. And again, on this one, kudos to the utilities department for the way they managed that and providing reserves for operations, capital projects, storm debris cleanup, et cetera. So they've really done a good job of managing that financially. And then finally, the city's CAFR, so on the city docket is item 7AP, and I'm happy to report that the city has a net position of $2.1 billion. So as I mentioned earlier, the city's a really large operation. That really puts it in perspective. That's the net of all the assets and liabilities. And this was a decrease from the prior year of $140 million, but again, 293 of that was from the OPEB change. So same story, if we hadn't had that change, we would have seen even another increase. And we have a little graph here just to kind of show you that we've been kind of on this upward trajectory of our net position, and the downturn in 2018 really is related to that accounting change. I do want to say the $2.1 billion is not the total story, because also in the city's CAFR, if you look at the various city trusts that are not included in that, if you add those all up, that's an additional $1.5 billion of net position. So if you really add those all up and look in total, the city and all its entities have a net position of about $3.6 billion. So very, very healthy financially. One last thing I'd like to just point out is the general fund. One of the things we always look at is the fund balance in the general fund. We look at this two different ways. There's a GAAP basis, so a generally accepted accounting principle basis, and then there's budgetary basis. The difference really, GAAP basis, I'm way oversimplifying this, but for the most part, it assumes if the city closed its doors on June 30, 2018, there would still be a couple of months of revenue that would come in and get booked. So it always looks like a much bigger number. The budgetary basis, the green line, that's really one that we look at a lot when we're kind of looking at where we're going into the budget and our financial position, because that's really looking at what money is available, revenues minus expenditures. And we're happy to report that one increased by $19 million, due mostly to the quarter-cent increase and the fact that revenue collections began coming in, and we're just now getting those additional services ramped up. So very, very good story. I've been very quick to share those with the rating agencies and hope that they will take that into account. So, and then finally, just I have to take my opportunity to brag on my staff, and this is where we will be submitting this CAFR to the Government Finance Officers Association, who is the standard setter in the municipal finance world. And last year's report did receive their award for excellence in financial reporting, where they review it and make sure it complies with a host of best practices. And that was the 35th year in a row that we had received that reward. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kenny. Any questions?
I would like to say, too, that I really appreciate Kenny's leadership and Laura and the leadership team in accounting, but the full accounting staff. I don't know that this is everybody on the accounting team, but it really is a team effort to put this together. And when we get ready to go out to sell bonds, one of the first places, whether it's rating agencies or investors, they're looking at our financial statements and trusting the accuracy of those statements, and it's very important information. And Kenny, there's a lot of information that he gave us this morning, but it was a very condensed version. And I just really appreciate the great work that they do. We have so many employees throughout the city that are behind the scenes and we never see them. And so I have the opportunity here to have them with us this morning and just to say thank you to them, but also just the great work that so many employees do behind the scenes. I really appreciate their work.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks to everybody. Great job. All right. Well, we don't have a motion yet under MFA. If anybody would like to make it. We've got a motion and a second for all of the items. That's A through F. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to page 4. We adjourn OCMFA. We convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, where we have 3 items. And of course, one of these relates to the presentation just given. I'll accept a motion for all of them. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn OCPPA and convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust, where we have 3 items, including an item just presented on. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust and reconvene as the council, where we find ourselves on page 5, item 7, the consent docket. We've got a motion and a second for the item subject to individual consideration, and I know that we have a presentation on item P, and we have a presentation on item AN. We already had a presentation on item AP, and we have a presentation on item AQ. Is there anything else that a council member would like to talk about or pull out?
David, I just wanted to ask Eric a question on AI.
AI. AI2. Okay, we'll get that. Anything else? We'll do it in order, Eric, so we'll get you back. All right, so let's do it in order, and that brings us then to item P, which, I'm sorry, is Eric. Also Eric. You knew what you were doing. Sorry about that. All right, yes, item P. We've got a presentation by Eric Winger, Public Works Director, for this item on final plans and specifications for the boulevard.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As we have, actually, there's 2 items on your agenda today, and both of them are related to landscaping for the Oklahoma City Boulevard project. This is the first, but there is a second item that you're going to find in 7AD, and it's the preliminary report for a different section of the boulevard landscaping as well. But for this morning, we're going to update on the end sections, and work is progressing nicely along the Oklahoma City Boulevard. I think many have probably noted that several sections of the eastern portion in the vicinity of Gaylord back to the west towards Hudson Avenue have been open for a little over maybe 2 months, where we're actually starting to get some use and finding some relief in some of the downtown areas. But one of the things that you're going to note is that those sections haven't been fully completed, and one of those projects is the landscaping of the boulevard itself. So just to do a little bit of history, I know that it's been some time since we've looked at the boulevard, but I think many will maybe forget that the boulevard project actually is not a standalone project. It's actually a part of the original Interstate 40 relocation, which is a project that was originally conceived back in 1995. I've put a brief history of some of those things that went through 1998 into the environmental studies, into the 2002 Federal Highway Administration record of decision, but the actual construction of I-40 and its relocation was finished in 2012, so here we are in 2018. I mean, time has flown, right? But the boulevard construction began in 2014 and is still underway. That project, as the boulevard, which ODOT is completing, is scheduled to be complete this summer, 2019. So the end is near, and so we're almost there. But with that, the Oklahoma City Boulevard is an Oklahoma Department of Transportation project, so all of the roadway work, the signals, the lighting, all of the hard improvements, the hardscapes are all part of the ODOT project. But it's been a partnership with Oklahoma City since its beginning for Oklahoma City to then assume the landscaping role. And so we've had 2 consultants providing design on that, the east and west sections, the east section being east of Gaylord, the west section being west of Western. That's by CLS and Associates, and then the center section is under design by Howard Fairbairn Site Design. This really outlines that extent of the boulevard from its western most section just west of Virginia Avenue all the way east through the Bricktown area, and we've color-coded this to kind of show you those ends, or the east and west sections, and then that center section. So much of the work that we see now in construction is that center section. The east is open, so you can access I-235, I-35 to the east. You can access Interstate 40 to the west. But as you drive those today, you're going to see again that there's medians that haven't been fully built out. But the idea of the boulevard was to provide this enhanced entrance into downtown, also with the city's goals to beautify that to make sure that it's a gateway into our core. The budget for the section that's on the agenda today is about $2 million, and we've checked that estimate, and so it is ready for bidding. And this is what that schedule is going to look like. So there are 2 different bids, and so what's on the agenda today is the end sections. The plans are complete this month. We will bid that this month with the construction start with the actual landscape improvements in January, with its completion also aligning with the completion of the boulevard in summer of 2019. And so the timing is right for these improvements to proceed. Now, these project pictures that I'm getting ready to show you are those that were actually included in the preliminary report. And so when we talk about a boulevard, we're talking about a perspective. This would be that west section where those existing medians are. There's the existing light towers that you can actually see in this photo. But the idea is a tree-lined boulevard that has some median plantings as well. And so a lot of highly maintainable landscape items. These are not going to require as much maintenance as, say, flower gardens, and so a lot of native plants. A lot of coordination was done with the city's Parks Department and the city's Planning Department, so we very much appreciate their assistance in making sure that we have a design that will work well for Oklahoma City. But this is one of those renderings of that western section. This is a rendering of that eastern section, so this would be through that Bricktown area today. So there are some walkways that are actually already constructed. They're not heavily in use, but you're going to see, again, the enhancement of that center median with trees and a lot of different landscape items. You'll see some hardscape components as well with the use of some rock, some concrete barriers and things that are around to help with trimming and mowing and things that will be necessary periodically. This is another perspective, and this is just going to be immediately east of the railroad tracks. So this is between Oklahoma Avenue and E.K. Gaylord, and again, you can just see some of those enhancements that are anticipated there and as a part of this project. When we look at it in plan, we're going to see this as a typical, but again, it's tree-lined, it's improvements on the edges of the roadway, and then the medians. This gives you a little better idea of some of the variation that's planned in those medians. There's a host of different planting types. You're going to see these types of trees, from bald cypress to crepe myrtle, switchgrass, and some different types of plant materials, again, that have been coordinated with our city's parks and planning departments. These are some of the typical median plantings. Just looking at the size of these are very large medians. It's a very long boulevard, so obviously scale was important when the consultants were looking at part of this design just to make sure that it was consistent. But as we look into what's next, we actually have already started a tree procurement package very similar to what was done on the MAPS 3 Scissortail Park, with the idea that going out for a procurement package, we could make sure that we unified the plantings, even though we have 2 different projects and 2 different consultants. But those are already underway. We just mentioned the schedule for the end sections, where it's anticipated to bid and start construction here in January. But the center section plans are nearly complete as well. We're planning to bring those back to the City Council upon the approval of the preliminary report today that's on the agenda. But with that center section would also be in construction most likely in spring, and we'd be finishing that up as well in 2019. So if we look forward to the landscape improvements, this really does finish up that boulevard project that's been underway for quite some time. But with that, we're excited to move forward and can answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Eric?
So if I heard right, the boulevard should be done next year.
So the boulevard will be done in about summer of 2019, except for maybe some of the final landscape improvements. Obviously, it's difficult for the city to be able to do some of its work until ODOT's 100% complete, but they're working generally from east to west. We're expecting the next section of the boulevard towards Walker Avenue possibly to open by in the next couple of weeks. But as they continue to the Western Avenue section, that to be done by summer of 2019.
Cool, thanks.
Eric, how about the lighting along there? It's so dark when you get on it, climb.
So yes, there are some issues with theft with some of the lighting systems, especially along the western portion of the boulevard. ODOT is committed to replacing the wiring that has been lost, and we're working to restore that soon. So they are committed to making sure that when that's turned over to the city, that the systems are all operational. The city is looking to also to try to deter theft, look at different wire types and also some vandal-proof type box arrangements. But I would say that it's not just affecting the boulevard. We're seeing some light theft, wire theft citywide along a lot of the major interstates. And so we're working very closely with OG&E to see what opportunities we have to hopefully limit that. But we're in the midst of repairing other lighting across the city as well.
I really appreciate you getting Fifth and Robinson working finally.
It's slow, but I will say too, sometimes when the systems are vandalized, it's not just a matter of just replacing the wiring. A lot of times there's major damages made to the infrastructure. So we're having to replace conduit and bases and things that have been destroyed while they're getting that wire out of the system. So, but we're looking to try to change some technologies and some monitoring to see if we can limit that in the future. And we hear that other cities are having some similar issues as well.
Is that copper wiring, Eric, or?
So what the standard has been for years is copper wiring. I will say that we are looking at aluminum wiring for some of our lighting systems, which is less desirable for salvage. So that is something that we're looking into and hoping to implement in the rewiring of some of the systems. So it has a lower initial first cost, but the fact that it's not as desirable by vandals because it doesn't have a high recovery cost, we're hoping to make that a standard moving forward. It's a difficult situation. I mean, it's hard to monitor some of these areas. Some are remote. A lot of it's done at night, when there's not a lot of visibility. So it's a challenge.
Okay, any other questions for Eric on this item? You can stay right there because the next one is item AI2. Councilwoman Salyer had a question for you on that.
Great, thank you. And Mayor, I did forget something. I did want to mention 7J, so I'm taking us way out of order, but I saw Randy Marks here. So, Eric, this is also about lighting, so I just wanted to get a little bit of feedback. This is an allocation of some 2007 GEO bond funds to do some downtown lighting upgrades. You might just share, we've had some real problems, particularly I think with the two-tiered lights that are pedestrian and otherwise, and we've got a lot of strobe effect going on, and I just wanted to see if this package was intended to fix all of that.
So the answer is yes. This package is that second part of helping upgrade and replace a lot of the Project 180 downtown lights, which are the ones that have just in the last year have seen some failures. What we find is that even the Project 180 downtown enhancement projects are now becoming of age. A lot of those projects were finished 6 and 7 years ago where some of those initial lighting systems were installed, and the life expectancy of those bulbs is starting to expire. Well, one of the things that's becoming more difficult, and this is lighting systems system-wide, is that the old incandescent bulbs are no longer available, and it's now time to upgrade to LED. So this is an upgrade to get those from an older incandescent system to an LED technology, and it's going to help in two ways. One is it's completely going to replace those lighting systems. LED has a longer life cycle, longer than 6 to 7 years, and more like 10 to 15 years, and so we wouldn't expect to have to do the replacements as often, but this will help reconcile a lot of the lighting that continues to suffer certain outages in the downtown area that's the Project 180. We're hoping then as we move forward, all new projects are going to be LED from the start, so we won't go to an older technology for any new projects. So a lot of the systems that are being installed as a part of the Boulevard are already LED. Some of the older systems might be some of those incandescent systems, but we'll upgrade those as well. But this is the start to make sure that we can get that conversion underway.
Great. And then if I could, Mayor, just jump back.
Yeah,
we had 3 items on item J that are 1% for public art commissions that I always like to mention. We are engaging Jim Gallucci for a project at South Lakes Park. We're engaging Brett McDaniel for Fire Station 29 with a project, and Clint Shore for a project on the MAPS 3 West River Trail. So just another full day of wonderful projects cropping up all over Oklahoma City. Thank you, Randy, for your guidance in that area.
Great. All right. Well, that brings us to 7AN, and we have a presentation on this item from Ian Colgan of the Oklahoma City Housing Authority.
Good morning. Ian Colgan with the Community Enhancement Corporation, which is the nonprofit development arm of the Oklahoma City Housing Authority. Pleased to be here this morning to present our project, Mount Vernon Apartments, which we've applied for an allocation of GOLT AHP funding to help us finish out the acquisition and renovation of this property. A little bit about this property. It's located on 4020 North Meridian, Ward 1, just north of 39th Street Expressway. It consists of 92 units, mainly 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, some studios. about 4 apartment buildings are built around courtyards and a central community building with some various amenities that need to be upgraded. We acquired this property in September of this year. We actually renamed it Yorktown Apartments, but for simplicity, we're discussing its old name now. This property is integral to an expanded development program that the CEC and the Housing Authority are engaging in across the city. One is recapitalization of our public housing stock, but the second is expansion of affordable housing opportunities around the community. This property was important to us because it met 3 strategic goals of ours. The first of which is it represents an opportunity to acquire a naturally occurring affordable housing property. This is a category of apartment communities that are older, usually built 40, 50 years ago. This property was built in the 60s. Over time, they have not received the same amount of renovation and upgrades to remain as Class A or Class B properties, and therefore the rents match kind of their condition. They're affordable in the fact that they simply have not been kept up over time. These are ripe for acquisition to remain affordable because private parties who acquire these usually either acquire and don't do anything, keeping rents affordable. They can acquire and raise rents without any improvements because rents around the city, especially on this side of town, have grown quite a bit over the last 5 years, or they can put minimal investment. We see this as an opportunity to acquire, stabilize, and improve a property that provides better opportunity and quality to the residents living there and living in that area of town. Second is that we see this property being located in an opportunity area. This is not to be confused with an opportunity zone, which is a tax break district, but an opportunity area is a district that has come out of the affordable housing community in the last 5 or 6 years. It recognizes that the vast majority of low-income housing is located in high poverty areas with limited access to employment, educational opportunities for those residents. That is very much true of Oklahoma City Housing Authority and CEC properties, either through our public housing program or housing choice voucher program. We've analyzed all parts of the city of Oklahoma City based on weighted categories of access to employment, education, services, and we find that this property is located in a relatively high area of opportunity, particularly higher than most of the other units that we have across the city, and that's a secondary opportunity for us for the acquisition. The third is deconcentrating poverty. That's connected to the opportunity area. We hope to connect some of the opportunity of where our residents live now to this area, which we think is, for some people, a better place to live than the neighborhood they're in currently. Talking about affordability and retaining affordability over a long period of time. Fortunately, as our mission is to create and retain affordable housing, but we have a couple of tools in our toolkit to make sure that is retained. The first is our affordable housing policy that we put over all our privatized property. Basically, we're required by the IRS to keep certain levels of affordability for our properties, or we lose our 501c3 status. That policy recognizes that we can have some market rate units that won't remove our status, but really are intended to target deeper levels of housing affordability that are not provided typically by the market. Just as an example for this property, affordable housing has lots of different definitions, but typically with government programs, it's related to a definition called area median income. Area median income, or AMI, is defined by HUD, and it depends on what household size you are, 1, 2, 3, 4, or higher. But you can see on this scale that around 80% is typically the cap of what's considered to be affordable for some programs. So CDBG and home, which the city administers, has to be below 80%. For the Oklahoma City metropolitan area, that's between $38,000 and $55,000 a year, depending on whether you're a 1 or 4-person household. That typically can afford $970 to $1,300 a month in rent. Given the 30% multiplier in that, you shouldn't, in order to be affordable, you shouldn't pay more than 30% of your gross income. The low-income housing tax credit, which is one of the most popular programs of affordable housing, is typically 60% or below AMI, and the programs we administer typically are 50% or below AMI. So we're targeting about 2/3 of these units to be between $585 and $650, depending on the bedroom size. That roughly is 600, equal to about 50% AMI. If you look on the left, people making $24,000 to $31,000 a year. The median household income for within a 3-mile range of this property is $42,000 for about 2.3 people per household. So we feel we're well below the market rate level of the area. Then we anticipate project-basing Section 8 vouchers into 1/3 of the property, and that is generally targeting 40% or below of area median income. Together with these two tools, the acquisition of a property that we didn't have to leverage substantial government resources to acquire, and then the application of the project-based vouchers, we can create a mixed income property that we feel is affordable for the long term and is much more stable than one at a given price area. Next. So we acquired the property with a loan to conduct certain renovations. It's about $4.3 million. Because we're essentially artificially capping rents when we could increase it based on the market, the value was restricted, therefore we couldn't borrow as much money as we wanted to finish out the renovation of the property. So we're applying about $1 million to the renovation. That's to do a lot of small little things that need to be done that have not been over time. Sanitary sewer improvements, exterior fixes, upgrading the laundry and amenities, flooring, etc. With the GOLT funds, we hope to finish out stormwater improvements that are badly needed both for the property and stormwater flow for the area, and then to do a full interior renovation of the units. With the combination of our loan and the GOLT funds, we anticipate a renovation to this scale that will basically keep the property stable for another 20 to 30 years until it's coming around for a new cycle of financing. And through that, we will create a much better and much higher quality apartment community for people to live in and for people in need. And with that, I welcome your questions.
Ian, are you on a transit line?
There is a bus line that goes past it. I forget the bus line in particular, but it does access the bus network.
So is that a priority, trying to identify properties on transit lines?
The transit is absolutely part of our analysis of the opportunity area analysis. So access to transit, obviously, for certain households is vital who can't afford, car ownership or that type of access. So that was an important factor in this property's acquisition.
Great, thank you.
Ian, this is a great project. Thank you for taking this one on. I assume you've got some other targeted locations around the city?
We do. One of our big initiatives is to acquire or build more properties in opportunity areas. It's where federal funding and state funding for the low-income housing tax credit are focused right now. Another example is the Johnson Care Suites, which is an affordable assisted living facility we're constructing on 122nd and Western. Another good example of affordable senior, independent, and assisted care in an area that is growing substantially with rents increasing quite a bit. So it's a core part of our development strategy.
Great. Appreciate the part.
Any other questions for Ian? Among the many things that the voters approved last September was this awesome investment in affordable housing. So thank you for following through on that, and I'm sure we'll all be following closely, and we're very grateful for your work and very excited about this project.
Thank you.
All right. AP, just worth noting, we did have, that was a presentation we already had, and now we have AQ, and we have a presentation from Doug Dowler.
Yes, good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm here to talk about item AQ, the Public Safety Sales Tax Report. This is an annual report we do to review the expenses from the prior year for the police and fire sales tax that were approved by voters in 1989. In 1993, we entered into the journal entry of judgment to kind of govern how those expenses are handled in fire and police. And so each year, as we're going through the budget process, fire and police develop what they plan to spend out of their sales tax funds. We review those projects with legal and then present a resolution to council that is approved on how those monies will be spent over the course of the year. Then as we finish up the year, we then review to make sure all of those expenses did comply with the resolution that was adopted. And that's what this report is confirming, that all of the expenses in FY18 did comply with that resolution and with the journal entry of judgment. The police sales tax fund funds 220 positions. The fire sales tax fund funds 202 positions, and as well as improvements in their facilities and other activities. We go through and make sure all of the expenses were for the right people. We review payroll records and make sure it's those identified positions that were paid and not anything else. And then after we prepare this report, our auditor's office reviews the expenses and our categorization of them, and in conjunction with the CAFR that was presented today, we have the audited financials. We categorize the expenses. The auditor's office confirms that they're accurately portrayed, and that it complies with the journal entry of judgment. So we have an opinion from the auditor's office that this materially represents all of their expenses and complies with the journal entry of judgment, and governs the $40-some million in expenses from the fire and police sales tax from FY18 from the prior year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any on that.
All right. Any questions or comments for Doug? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That exhausts all the things that we had pulled out. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to talk about on the consent docket? We already have a motion and a second. Seeing any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to the concurrence docket, items 8, A through D.
Move those items subject to individual consideration.
Got a motion and a second. Is there anything anybody wants to talk about, pull out, discuss? Seeing no discussion, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to page 20 of your printed agenda, items requiring separate votes. We'll begin with 9A1. Items under 9A are ordinances on final hearing that were recommended for approval at the Planning Commission. Item 9A1 is at 8516 North Classen Boulevard, moving from R1 to I1. This is in Ward 2. Councilman Shaveed.
Did anyone sign up to speak?
It looks like yes. Pat Garrett.
Okay.
At Garrett with Garrett & Company, 9701 North Broadway Extension, Oklahoma City. I'm just here to answer any questions anyone has.
Okay.
Well, this had unanimous Planning Commission approval with no protesters present, so if there's no questions, I would move for approval.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. 9A2, this is at 14500 South Sooner Road, going from PUD 1422 to PUD 1697. Councilman Stone.
Thank you, Mayor. Has anyone signed up to speak on this item? I'd go ahead and recommend for approval. It's just a continuation of what's kind of becoming a commercial corridor down South Sooner. It's going to be a really nice project down there, so I'd make a motion for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9A3 at 301 Northwest 96 from R1 to SPUD 1080. Councilwoman Nice.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there anyone to speak?
Nope.
All right. This was moved for approval, and this is to a modified light industrial with live work use. So with no protesters here, I would ask for it to be moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9A4 at 640 Northwest 150th Street, going from R1 to SPUD 1083. Councilwoman Nice.
And for this one, do we have anyone?
No one signed up.
Although there's a gentleman standing here.
Yes, Your Honor. Mason Schwartz, 522 Colcord Drive, on behalf of the applicant.
Okay.
You want to start, or I can run through it if you like?
If you would like, that's fine.
Sure. So this is a rezoning application from R1 to SPUD 1083 at 640 Northwest 150th is east of Western Avenue, located on 150th. The current structure on the property is a residential structure. It's been used historically as residential. We are just seeking to rezone it to a SPUD that would consist of an O1 base and allow for only 3 uses, which would be single family, the live-work use unit, and then the administrative professional offices. Directly to the west of the property is SPUD 921, which we had rezoned in August of 2016. Under the same concept, it was previously a residential structure converted to an office usage. So we believe it's consistent with the comp plan. Staff recommended approval. Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously. We are unaware of any protests. Willing to answer any questions. We agree to all the TEs except for the one that was stricken, and we'd ask for your approval.
And as he said, no protesters, so I would also ask that we move the item.
Second. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
That brings us to 9A5 at 9701 Boardwalk Boulevard, going from R1 and C3 to SPUD 1084. Councilman Greiner?
Is the applicant here? Got a question for you. Anybody else sign up? Okay. One of the TEs, TE number 3, was to add multifamily residential back into it.
Yes.
Did you want that?
Staff requested that.
I know, but did you want it?
I don't know that we need it. Staff just kind of wanted to keep it in there, so.
Okay.
This is for a parking lot for express personnel.
Right. Would you be opposed to taking it out?
No.
Okay. Can I amend it to take that out? Is that legal?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I would like to amend this to take out the multifamily residential.
Okay.
Can I make that motion?
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to amend the TEs for item 9A5. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. The amendment passes.
Okay, I'll move for approval.
Second. Got a motion and a second on the item 9A5. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. 9A6 at 7010 North Classen, going from PUD 1173 to SPUD 1087. Councilman Shadid.
Sign up to speak.
No, sir.
This had unanimous Planning Commission approval, no protesters. They removed payday lending agencies from the SPUD, which I always appreciate. I move for approval.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9A7 at 1553 Southwest 44th, going from R1 to SPUD 1088. Councilwoman Salyer.
Thank you, Mayor. This is certainly an area where lots of these little residential homes are being converted into businesses, and the purpose of this is to permit the sale of some dietary supplements, oils, and skincare products. There were no protests. It received unanimous Planning Commission approval and staff recommendation. I would move approval.
All right. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9A8 at 1025 North Tulsa, from C4 and I1 to SPUD 1090. Councilman McAtee.
Yes, is the applicant present? Francis, has anybody signed up?
No, sir.
Tim, if you would, just give us a brief overview of what your applicant is wanting.
Good morning. Tim Johnson with Johnson and Associates here on behalf of the applicant. The applicant in this case is Conley Paving, and they run probably the cleanest paving company operation I've seen in town. Their place is neat as a pin. They have a plant in the back. They're very neighborhood friendly. So what this will allow them to do is to continue to build some additional warehouse uses along their frontage on Tulsa. And here's the plant. There's a big industrial operation south of us.
So we worked really closely with the Planning Commission chair. You can see in the report there were some adjustments made to the TEs, being sensitive to the neighborhood, even though that's zoned R2, mostly rental property, but we eliminated the heavy industrial uses in this leg so that we wouldn't be competing with that, and the rest of it's industrial to the north. Planning Commission did approve it unanimously.
This is a very challenging area and has been for a number of years, and so it's good. The neighbors were all in favor of this, which is different than some of the experiences that we've had in the past. Thank you for your efforts and your applicants' efforts. I move for approval.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you. That concludes item 9A. 9B was withdrawn at the beginning of the meeting, which brings us to 9C 1 and 2. This is scooter and bike share. I know Councilman Stonecipher and Councilwoman Salyer have taken a particular interest in this. I think Councilman Stonecipher, do you want to start us off on our discussion today?
Yes, we've had several meetings with the companies, the applicable companies, and trying to meet with, get their ideas, and make sure that we're procedurally moving in the right direction to make this process a little smoother, and I think we've been successful in that. And Amanda and Eric are here today to kind of explain the timeline of what we've gone through and where we're at.
Okay. Amanda Carpenter from the Municipal Councilor's Office.
Good morning. This was originally introduced to Council on August 28th, 2018. This is the shared vehicle ordinance. It provides for a licensing structure as well as a revocable permit structure for all shared vehicles, scooters, potentially bikes in the future, other vehicles that may come to Oklahoma City. This item has been deferred 4 times in order to allow staff to meet with the scooter companies in order to try and reach a resolution of their concerns. Staff has proposed at least 2 different options that may provide some flexibility to these companies. Right now we're still working through that process, but what we found is that all of those matters can be handled through a procedure that Public Works would apply. So we believe that it's appropriate for Council to consider this ordinance today and move forward with putting an ordinance in place to be able to best regulate and manage the scooters within Oklahoma City.
Okay, thank you. Eric, did you have something to say as well? Not necessarily? Okay. Well, we do have someone who signed up to speak, so we might turn to them now. Sam Sadel from Lime.
Mayor Holt, council members, I just wanted to briefly say thank you to Councilman Salyer, Councilman Stonecipher for sort of shepherding this process forward, but also to city staff. City staff has been an absolute joy to work with throughout this confusing and somewhat frustrating process for everyone involved, but they've been, without a doubt, professional and prompt and everything you want in city staff. I know I speak on behalf of both Lime and Bird when I say thank you for making sure that they are here and that they are just absolutely a joy to work with. We're supportive of this moving forward and look forward to working with them and others to move the process through the administrative track.
And my understanding is if all you had to judge was the words on paper, you might not be thrilled, but you've had adequate assurances that this won't be executed in that way necessarily. It'll be in a way that you think your company and probably other companies can work with.
Exactly, Mr. Mayor. I think we, on the words on paper are somewhat concerning for us, but as a whole, through having worked with them and built up a relationship with them, we trust that we'll be able to find a solution that works for everyone.
Okay. Well, I'm sure I speak for numerous members up here, maybe all of us. You know, we certainly invite you to stay in touch with us if you feel like the things that made you comfortable today are not followed through on.
And vice versa. As you all see our system in action, let us know how we can do a better job, what we need to be thinking about, and how, as we work and grow here in Oklahoma City, what your vision is for mobility across the city.
We definitely are seeing it in action. There is a lot of action going on. But I think maybe I would just speak for Mark as well. One of the things that we learned in this process is that Oklahoma City treats its streets and its sidewalks differently than other cities. And so the complication that we've had in dealing with, right-of-way and getting the approval of property owners is different than these companies are accustomed to in any other city. but it is the nature of doing business in Oklahoma City that makes it that way. So I think with the procedural changes, we've created a solution to a slightly complicated problem because of who we are. So,
Absolutely.
thanks.
Has there been any other thoughts on capturing synergy between our transit system and scooters?
Absolutely. As piece of this, of the ordinance before you today is a recommendation and, in fact, an allowability for us to begin to deploy devices at bus stops. And I know that we've all been working with the Transit Authority to look through, as we think about now that we're growing, what are the plans, what are the ways that we can integrate directly into the transit system?
Great.
And I think the amendment that I presume we're still supporting and are going to vote on, also, it's been sitting here for months, so everybody's probably lost the thread. But as you see here, this kind of lifted, if I recall, lifted the limit when as long as the scooters were at bus stops.
Great.
Yeah, at the transit stops.
Transit stops, yes. That's one element of it, yes, sir.
Okay.
I do have a question, and it's not related to the vendors, but in terms of the enforcement activity with respect to people who ride the scooters on sidewalks in the business district, are we pursuing that? Can someone speak to that? Because that's the only complaint that I continue to hear about is the occasional
Sure.
rider on the sidewalks in the business district.
That is a matter that the Oklahoma City Police Department can issue tickets for, and I believe that they have been out in some occasions. Obviously, at a big event, they have the focus on keeping the entire crowd safe, so it's a little bit more difficult, but they are working on that.
And I should note, us and others, what we have done is we're focused on education. So how do we educate our riders to make sure that they're not riding on the sidewalk? And you'll see, actually, if you log into the Lime app, the very first thing it sees, before you can even see where all the scooters are do not ride on the sidewalk.
Sam, what about helmets?
Yes, helmets are, in fact, a key part of safety as we conceptualize them, and I know as Bird does as well. We are engaged in numbers of helmet giveaways here in and around the city. In fact, Lime's company is giving away 250,000 helmets over the next couple of weeks. And helmets are obviously an essential piece of it, but we think about safety in a broader context than just getting people to wear helmets. It's how do we create safe spaces for people to ride and get where they need to go. It's how do we focus on safety education. So helmets are one piece of it, but safety is really at the core of what we do and is a broad idea for us.
The trolley tracks are also an issue.
Absolutely, and I will, at some point I think I'm going to connect you all with the city of Kansas City that has done a very good job on education around their new streetcar system as it relates to dockless scooters as well.
Great, thank you.
Have you been deploying at our streetcar platforms?
Not on the platforms, adjacent to the platforms.
That was a test. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I should say, it's very exciting to see over these last few days people combining dockless mobility with the streetcar to get around downtown. It's been great to see.
Just to clarify the amendment, so they can have unlimited scooters at transit stops, and that doesn't go towards any, that's exempted.
Does anyone remember how that was written?
Sure. So the limit for a dockless scooter company when they receive their permit is 250 throughout the city of Oklahoma City. The exception is for the numbers that they have at their transit locations. Those don't count towards the 250.
It could be unlimited.
It can be unlimited, but they do have to work with Embark as part of that placement.
To justify whatever numbers or...
And to make sure that they're not conflicting with the services that Embark is providing.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Any other? Yes.
Question, with safety being of such paramount importance, do we have any statistics on what the safety track record has been since the scooters have been introduced here in Oklahoma City?
I can find out additional information for you, Councilman. I should say, I would point you towards some of the analysis that they're doing down in Austin, Texas. Austin has a very large fleet of dock-free mobility devices, and they've actually done some real good statistical analysis as to what the rates of incident are, and where they compare with other modes, walking, bicycling, and of course, driving cars. But Council, we can talk after. Please let us know.
Any other questions for anybody? Comments? If we want to go ahead and move forward today, I guess we would start with a vote on the amendments. Okay, we've got a motion and a second on item C1, the amendments to the proposed ordinance. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 9C2, the ordinance on final hearing. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. You will cease seeing this item on your council agendas now. Thank you. And again, I invite you to continue to talk to the elected officials as well if you feel that your business model needs some work in relation to our ordinance. So, okay. That brings us to 9D. This starts with 9D1, some amendments regarding the ordinance of 9D2. This is the third of 3 meetings for the consideration of this. Is there anything we need to say? Remind me what this is about in a word, if you wouldn't mind.
So this is on the pre-qualification process, and Eric can just touch real quickly on kind of some of the changes that have been made. And really one of the goals is to try to make this more flexible so that every time they make a minor change within the process, you don't have to come back and do an ordinance amendment, so they can be more efficient in the way they're managing this.
So kind of go back over the history just briefly. In Oklahoma City, when you do work in the right-of-way, you're required to be pre-qualified, and we have a number of categories for the different contractors that do that work. The ordinance that is currently in place includes all those classifications within the ordinance. So one of the ordinance revisions is that the Pre-Qualification Review Board, who meets monthly and receives these applications, is going to sponsor that classifications list and allow the board to update it more periodically as changes are needed, not requiring the ordinance be updated each time. So that's one of the major changes. It's with what you have presented to you today for final hearing. There are a few other changes that are included. Licensing used to be a separate fee other than the actual application cost for pre-qualification. Those have now been combined for ease, and also having the anniversary date for renewals be exactly the same. One of the amendments that you're considering today is actually to add boring contractor, which was not previously in the ordinance. It adds that as well. And then it also changes that the effective date would be February 1st, 2019.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments? So this would be, your motion would be for the amendments? Yeah. Okay. We've got a motion and a second on the amendments. Item D1. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That leaves us with 9D2, the ordinance on final hearing. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 9E. This is an ordinance on final hearing as well. This is the third of 3 meetings relating to fees in our municipal code.
This is the one on streetcar.
Oh, this is on streetcar.
This one's on streetcar with really the construction zones and the regulation as far as how the safety around those construction zones is handled around the streetcar line.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And now we're at 9F. This is the second of 3 meetings required under the Ryan Resolution, as it is called, regarding ordinance amendments. And so this is the public hearing. So this is a public hearing regarding ordinance relating to taxation, amending Article 5 of Chapter 52 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code, regarding annual fee assessed on investor-owned utility or rural electric cooperatives. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this item? No, sorry, it's just a public hearing. Just a public hearing. No motion occurred. That concludes the public hearing on that item. That moves us to 9G, ordinance to be introduced and adopted with an emergency. And I believe Wiley Williams from the Municipal Counselor's Office is going to make a presentation and also discussing the time imperative and why we are not, in this case, going to be taking 3 meetings, or at least it is proposed that we do not take 3 meetings on this.
Yes. This issue was brought to our attention by the tax lawyer for the employee retirement system, and in recent IRS regulations and interpretive bulletins and letters, they have been trying to define a term in the IRS code that calls for a complete separation of employment. and the practices that the city's been doing over the years of allowing employees to retire and start collecting their pension benefit and then rehiring them to do a job immediately after that is running afoul of the recent IRS letters, interpretive letters, and procedures. So the tax lawyer brought it to our attention and thinks it needs to be adopted before the end of the year. And so what this means is that you have to have a complete cessation of your employment, and the IRS has not defined how long that has to be, but they have allowed employees to return to work after 5 months. The tax lawyer thinks we can get by with 90 days, so we have chosen 90 days as our target right now for what constitutes a complete cessation of employment. But you can't do that with the intent of coming back. It's just if you go out and get a second job or get a new job and leave the city and retire, and something goes wrong in that 90 days and you'd like to come back, that's okay. But if you do it, retire knowing that you're going to be hired back on the 91st day, that would still run afoul of the IRS interpretive bulletins. So,
And when they come back, they don't come back in full-time employment, right? If they come back, they come back as in part-time employment at times.
It could be either one.
Okay.
If they come back as full-time employees, they have to pay back all of the money that they received.
That was my point, was as a part-time employee, you can't continue, if you come back as a full-time employee, you can't continue to draw your pension.
Right. And that already exists.
That's right.
So
do we need two motions on this?
I'm sorry?
Do we need two motions on this?
We need the emergency pass.
Is that
a separate vote? Okay.
2 votes.
Okay, and somewhere in there that waives the Ryan ordinance.
Right, it's impliedly waived if you approve the ordinance with the...
And it's expressly in that resolution that it adopted that procedure too. If you adopt it with the emergency,
then it's waived.
Yes.
Okay. All right, any questions for Wiley?
So do we move the item first and then seek the emergency? I'd move the item.
Got a motion and a second on the ordinance. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And then we would need a motion on the emergency. Got a motion and a second on the emergency. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously with required votes for the emergency. All right, 9H1. This is the public hearing regarding one dilapidated structure. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for 9H2, a resolution declaring that the structure is dilapidated. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9I1 is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures listed here, except for the several that the city manager took off at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under this public hearing? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for I2, the resolution declaring that the structures are unsecured.
Move the resolution.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Brings us to 9J1, a public hearing regarding abandoned buildings, except for the ones the city manager removed at the beginning. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under this public hearing? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for 9J2, a resolution declaring that the buildings are abandoned. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 9K, 1 and or 2. This is a resolution authorizing the municipal councilor to confess judgment without an admission of liability in the United States District Court regarding Ellis v. City of Oklahoma City. I don't believe we need executive session.
Move the item.
Got a motion and a second for item 9K1. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9L1 and or 9L2, resolution authorizing the municipal councilor to confess judgment without admitting liability in the case of Saxon v. City of Oklahoma City. Don't believe we need executive session. Got a motion and a second for 9L1, the resolution. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9M1 and/or 9M2. This is a joint resolution with the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority authorizing Stacy Haas, Fechner, and Collins, Zorn, and Wagner to represent various city employees in the case of Brewer v. City of OKC. Got a motion and a second for the resolution, 9M1, the joint resolution. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9N1, claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I don't believe we need executive session. I would entertain a motion for denying the claims. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Brings us to item 10, 10A1, claims recommended for approval. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I don't believe we need executive session. I would entertain a motion to approve the claims. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And that brings us to item 11, items from council. We'll start with Ward 1.
So I guess this morning we got an email from the deputy police chiefs advocating for the formation of an ethics commission, so I'm just circling back. Are we making progress, kind of looking at peer cities and getting a presentation maybe from the city manager's office on ethics commission practices in other cities? Can we expect something in the near term?
I'll have to check on that to see where we are. I know that they're still working on, I think they've got the data in and still working on the report, so it should be something that we'll have soon.
Great. I think maybe I'll just email it later. There's an article in the Oklahoman like 20 years ago where the council was debating all this because of some actions at the time. It's a really lengthy article, and it's really interesting just how long the council has, how this has come in and out of our consciousness, and so I look forward to that.
And I think primarily with ethics commissions, it's looking at elected bodies and elected officials. It's not within management. I mean, we'll look to see what else is out there. Generally, we have a management process that works very well, and would want to keep that within our purview, being able to manage that process. So we don't typically see that, but I think we'll look to see what else is out there and bring that back to the council.
Great. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Councilman McAtee?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. A couple of weeks ago, the Windsor Area Business Group held a function on a Sunday afternoon celebrating Christmas in different parts of the world. It was very well attended. It is about the 5th year in a row that they've done this, and it's been increasing in size every year. Hats off to Barbie Smalley, Kim Lowe, and their people, and also Kim Cooper Hart from staff who went out to supervise and check it out. It just shows what can be done if people and businesses will get together and plan things, activities that will encourage people to participate more and to accent the positive instead of the negative. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a second and wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't possibly let this time go without talking about the incredible reception Streetcar has been receiving. Friday may have been the most fun day I've experienced in Oklahoma City in a long time. There were so many people downtown. The pictures of the confetti guns and the skyscrapers in the background, it was amazing. Mayor, thank you for your leadership in that. You need to thank all of our mayors. This was a big celebration of 25 years of MAPS, and to be able to hold the streetcar opening on the actual day of the vote 25 years ago was really special. But I sat outside on Broadway for a couple of hours on Saturday just watching the people, the shopping, the in and out of restaurants. There were entertainment at all of the stops. People were singing Christmas carols, and it felt like Rockefeller Center. It was just incredibly exciting. And, I guess I would conclude a couple of things. I want to say thank you to Christy Yeager and her team. They did an amazing job pulling it all together. Factor 110 helped us with all of the organization. Our staff, I didn't realize that it was Cleo Rayhon that organized all the volunteers, but there were people at every stop all weekend helping people navigate, learn the routes. It was amazing. And to conclude, I got a phone call last night at 10:15 from a friend who had just stopped by Stella, and the streetcar at 11th and Hudson was packed at 10:15 on a Monday night. That is really exciting news. So I hope we keep up the momentum. Thank you, everybody, for being patient and riding, but this is a new era in Oklahoma City, and the scooters, seem to be an integral piece of it. People were getting off and getting on scooters, and downtown is just buzzing.
No, very special weekend in the
Very
city's
special
history, no
weekend.
doubt.
Really exciting.
If anything, we had too many riders. We maybe need to get to some normalcy, but it was tremendous, and everybody, I can't wait to hear the numbers. I know they're still cleaning them up, but it was tens of thousands of riders this weekend. So
And I think on Friday night, about 7 o'clock, I saw Jason Fairbush on one of the streetcars. I think our staff rode, all weekend, all day. I don't know, including the mayor. I don't know when you got off. But there were lots of photographs, but it truly is a remarkable day in Oklahoma City's history.
Yeah, Rachel and I rode after midnight on Saturday, and it was not as full as it has been all day long, but it was busy. It was half full, after midnight. So yeah, it was tremendous. Councilwoman Nice.
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to commend everyone for their efforts and what happened on Friday. That was my first event to be a part of, and it was tremendous, especially with the reception. And also thank you to the Curbside Chronicle for producing that big article paper, newsletter for everyone to be able to understand a little bit more about the streetcar. And it was very special to talk about Mr. Thomas Minter, who hadn't rode that since the 40s. So just those types of stories, and also with some young ladies that went to Douglas High School, and this was their first time to ride on Friday, so they were a part of new history. So just to be a part of that, it was just awesome to experience. And we do know we had the community connecting because there was a lost bear on Friday, and Twitter went crazy trying to find this bear, and the 4-year-old was able to be reunited with her bear. So that just proves the power of connection and the streetcar for Oklahoma City. However, now we have a story about Rainbow Bear. So Rainbow Bear is looking for their owner, and if you know where Rainbow Bear's owners are, there has been another Twitter reach out for that. So please help us find the owner of Rainbow Bear. And also Sunday we had the Holiday River Parade, and I was down there, and it was extremely packed. It was basically standing only in the young people. As soon as the boat came by for Santa Claus, you could hear them screaming for Santa. So I think that was the most exciting part for even myself. But that was awesome. And Ralph Ellison Library on Saturday, they had a holiday party, so thank you to the young people with Jack and Jill of America for assisting with those efforts. Those young people came in and they were excited. Some got toys and they got to make cards for the Assisted Living Center, which is located also in the ward. And lastly, thank you to the community for coming to our Ward 7 Developers Forum that we had on this past Monday. We had a great attendance, great information was given, and we will have that information posted and another one to continue this conversation in January.
Thank you, Aaron. Just briefly, yesterday in the mail I received a thank you note, hand-drawn thank you note from 6-year-old Grace Rogers, and she was responding to the new Lone Oak Park. I thought it was really cute. Her last name is Rogers. Her stamps were Mr. Rogers stamps. And this is what she said. Dear Oklahoma City, thank you for building a park. I would like to have in the park a swing set, and this is my favorite, a running trail because my dad likes to run, tire swing, tall slide, etc. Grace Rogers, 6 years old. So I thought that was priceless. I want to thank Mike McCullough for the River Day Parade. He worked really hard to make that a successful event, and I thought it was a very successful event with Jim Couch serving as the Grand Marshal. And the other thing, the 25th anniversary with the streetcar, Mayor Nork was there, and he was just beaming like a kid. He had a great time, and I thought it was a wonderful event. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That brings us to item 12, City Manager Reports.
So we have one report on it. It's the sales tax report. I do want to note, so if you look at this again, we're still in the process where it factors in the rate increase, and so it shows 17.7% growth. The underlying growth is about 4.6% growth, so very good. We'd gone a couple of months with a little bit slower growth. Kind of expecting maybe going into the second half of the year to see some of that underlying growth slow down a bit, but we're still 1.3 million over target on sales tax. Use tax is better than that. We're about 7.5 over target between sales and use tax right now. On the use tax side, a lot of that has been, some of that ties into the increase in the rate, but also with the changes with online retailers remitting, and so it's been very good, very positive.
Thank you. If anyone wants to access that report or the claims and payroll, they can do so at okc.gov, linked from this council agenda. This brings us to item 13, citizens to be heard. Item A was handled near the beginning of the meeting. Has anyone signed up to speak? Does anyone wish to speak? All right, seeing none, this brings us to our final item, adjournment. I'll add that my Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's wishes to everybody. We won't meet again this calendar year. We will come together again January 2nd for the final meeting of the couch era, and he will be present for a resolution and other festivities. And there is a city party later today as well that I'm sure everyone's invited and welcome to. And with that, we are adjourned.